My name is Logan Newman,
And I'm Anna Beddingfield.
and this is our final research project for Business Law 2150. For our project, we decided to research sole proprietorships and take a closer look at the advantages, disadvantages, and debates of operating as a sole proprietor.
A sole proprietorship is the most simple and common legal structure to start a business. It is an unincorporated business owned and run by one individual. There is no distinction between the business and the owner. The owner is entitled to all of the profits and is responsible for all of the business's debts, losses, and liabilities. As long as you are the only owner, the sole proprietor status automatically comes based off of your business activities. For example, freelance writers are considered sole proprietors. Sole proprietorship is a popular business form because of its simplicity, ease of setup, and small cost. A sole proprietor needs to register his or her name and secure local licenses, and the sole proprietor is ready for business.
Sole proprietorship is considered one of the four legal structures of business, which include sole proprietorship, cooperative, corporation, and partnership. In a sole proprietorship, the owner is subject to very high liability, which is a tremendous legal issue that occurs often. Since there is no separate identity, the owner must sign a contract under his or her name. There are many successful businesses that started out as a sole proprietorship. For example, eBay was once a sole proprietorship.
Because you and your business are the same, the business itself is not taxed separately. The sole proprietorship income is your income. You report income, losses, and expenses with a Schedule C, which is a standard tax form 1040. Also, if the owner makes more than $400 net income, they must file a Schedule SE, which stands for Self-Employment Tax and is an extension of Form 1040.
One of the major trending topics associated with sole proprietorships is economic recession. The number of sole proprietorships have increased significantly in the past 30 years. In 1980, 39.2 Americans out of 1,000 operated a sole proprietorship. In 2007, 76.7 out of 1,000 Americans operated a sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorships are constantly increasing in number, but during an economic recession, they seem to grow at a faster than normal rate. And as you can see on the graph below, the number of sole proprietorships increased during rough economic times, although the income for most of the businesses decreased due to competition. A very well-known court case concerning sole proprietorships is U.S. versus Doe. Doe, who was the respondent, owned several sole proprietorships. Under federal investigation, he was served with 5 subpoenas by a grand jury. The subpoenas sought various business records from the sole proprietorships, which included telephone records, bank statements, and listing of all business records. Doe filed a motion to squash the subpoenas, which the District Court for the District of New Jersey granted. This raised the issue if the Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination applies to the act of producing business records for the sole proprietor's business. Another big trending legal issue is that it is associated with sole proprietorship taxation. In Smith versus the State Farm and Fire and Casualty, Smith, being a sole proprietor, had his workers' compensation insurance policy through State Farm Fire and Casualty. In their contract's terms of agreement, Smith, like any other sole proprietor, had a responsibility to file his taxes properly to the Form 1040, and if he did not, the contract was void. Sure enough, Smith was injured, and State Farm refused to pay because of Smith's improper filing of taxes that voided their contract. The court upheld State Farm's decision by stating that Smith's improper tax filing led to the qualities that lacked being a sole proprietorship?
The legal issue we focus on for sole proprietorship is unlimited liability. This is a risky issue with sole proprietorships for many reasons. Since there is no legal separation between you and your company, your personal assets are at risk. If someone sues your company and wins, they also may have the right to go after your personal assets, such as your cars, home, money, etc. The owner of a sole proprietorship is strictly liable for all debts and actions of the company. All personal income is linked to the business. Because of the unlimited liability issue, investors are hesitant to invest in sole proprietorships because there is no personal asset protection and you also can't sell stocks.
Also, since the business and owner are one legal entity, all of the business contracts are under the specific owner's name. In the case of a breach contract, the owner is held liable and is responsible for the appropriate litigation. Another issue with unlimited liability is the owner could be sued for any unlawful acts committed by any employee. The business owner must be held directly responsible for any losses, debts, or violations coming from the business. A hot topic in the world of sole proprietors is the Uniform Sole Proprietorship Act, which pushes for limited liability for sole proprietorships. This act gives proprietors the option of establishing themselves as a separate business entity. In whole, this would make sole proprietorships into one-person corporations where there is still one owner, but the assets are owned by the business as a whole. The USPA does have its benefits such as being able to establish the business's credit, being able to enter into separate leases, and the ability to open separate bank accounts, all in the name of the business.
The Uniform Sole Proprietorship Act has fallen under harsh criticism due to people's belief that a person should not have the power to create a separate business entity that they have complete and utter control of. They find it unlawful with no regulations. Another aspect of the USPA that is criticized is the fact that when a sole proprietor dies, the business will not die, but simply transfer ownership. This contradicts the limited life statute of sole proprietors that states when a proprietor dies, his or her business does too.
The Freelancers Union, a union of sole proprietors that cannot legally incorporate their businesses, view sole proprietorships as unfair due to the lack of liability protection. It is the belief of the union that the lack of liability protection leads to the sole proprietor's restricted expansion. You can only have one owner in a sole proprietorship. Although employees can be hired, nobody can be partial owner. This makes it very difficult for a sole proprietor to expand their business because of the lack of investors and the fact that banks are highly hesitant to give loans to sole proprietors because of their high liability.
Our opinion on sole proprietorships changed as our research went into more depth. Yes, it is a great way to easily start your own business with minimal cost. However, as time goes on and the business gets more popular, it will become too risky for the owner because of its unlimited liability. When the Uniform Sole Proprietorship Act is passed by the owner will have the option to create a separate legal business entity that will hold the liability while acting as the sole proprietor. It is our belief that this matter should be left as an option to the owner.
In conclusion, a sole proprietorship is the easiest and cheapest legal structure to start a business due to the minimal startup costs and lack of barriers to entry, such as there are no procedures to go through to start your own sole proprietorship. As we stated earlier, it is the belief of many that taxation is better with a sole proprietorship because of the lack of sophistication and the fact that the business is taxed solely on profits and losses with no incorporated tax rate. This means that sole proprietorships are taxed as little as possible. Something that may make one choose to incorporate their business is the fact that sole proprietors are held to unlimited liability for their business actions. This means that in the case of a lawsuit, the sole proprietor can lose all of his or her personal assets and damages. Although it has many critics, the Uniform Sole Proprietorship Act, if passed through Congress, will give sole proprietors limited liability which will protect their personal assets. In closing, after researching all aspects of sole proprietorships, we believe that it is a great way to easily start one's business, but in the long run, it becomes too risky for the owner due to their unlimited liability, and that's why we support the USPA. Here are a list of our references, and
Thank
you
you.
guys have a good day.